Hey guys, JCrossX here, and welcome back to the Class Overview series for our third episode. If you aren't already familiar, the Class Overview series is a collection of informative videos where we're going to be discussing the different classes in the Fire Emblem Three Houses.
We'll be going over general information about each class, like their certification requirements, stats, abilities, and their overall strength and limitations to determine their viability and what units are a good fit for each class. As per usual, these videos will be gameplay focused, so there shouldn't really be any major spoilers, but I advise you anyways to watch your own discretion. Sometimes certain things may be mentioned in passing, and if you haven't already experienced Three Houses yet, it is definitely worth your time.
For this episode, we're going to be tackling the Wyvern Master class along with its upgraded version, Barbarossa. Just like the other House Leader unique classes, this class is only usable in the respective route, and in this case, that's the Verdant Wind route. As you may have guessed, this means you will not have access to Claude and by extension these classes unless you choose to teach the Golden Deer House in Chapter 1. Obviously, Claude is the only unit who can use these classes, and rather than requiring him to have any specific skill levels or seals for certification, he will automatically be certified and reclassed into Wyvern Master in Chapter 13. Just like Dimitri's case with his Lord class, Claude will be forcibly deployed as this new flying class in the Chapter 13 mission with the unique battalion, the Immortal Corps. There is no difference in investment compared to the other House Leader classes, and as such, Wyvern Master serves as Claude's optional and free zero investment class.
Wyvern Master is a 7-move flying class, which puts it exactly in line with Wyvern Rider in terms of movement. It's important to note that you will only have the full 7 move if you are mounted, otherwise you'll be stuck with the base 4 move. Unlike the other House Leader classes, this class comes with 3 abilities instead of just 2. As a mounted class, it has access to the incredibly coveted ability Canto, allowing you to use any leftover movement after performing an action, perfect for enabling hit and run tactics. It also of course has Bow Fair to increase bow damage by 5, and it has Charm to increase adjacent allies damage by 3 like the other House Leaders. 2 things to note here are that Wyvern Master and its upgraded version are the only flying classes in the game with Bow Fair, and also that Charm is more impactful on Claude than is on the other House Leaders. His greater movement and range allows for more flexibility to position next to multiple allies. Upon mastering Wyvern Master, you get the ability Pomp and Circumstance, just like the other House Leader classes, which grants plus 4 luck and plus 4 charm. I would say this ability is about equally as good for Claude as it is for Dimitri, in the sense that it's not useless in enemy phase or dual phase oriented builds, but there are most likely better options.
Wyvern Master's base stats are probably the most well-rounded of the first-tier House Leader classes. Its bases are generally superior compared to the middling ones of High Lord, and in comparison to Armor Lord, it has the same 17 base strength and trades some of the HP and defense that class has in favor of higher dex, and most notably speed, which sits at a solid 19 base. This is the highest out of all the stat bases aside from HP, of course, but Claude's speed growth is in the upper echelon of units in 3 houses, so at most you'll get a point or so if you've been unlucky with speed level ups. Overall, the stat bases are definitely decent, but generally reflect Claude's base growth. Moving on to stat boost now, while in this class, Claude receives a plus 3 modifier to Dex, plus 2 modifier to both HP, Charm, and Mounted Strength, and a plus 1 to Defense, Mounted Speed, and Dismounted Strength. Breaking this down, we have the standard House Leader class Charm boost, along with generally solid boosts across the board. A Strength boost is definitely appreciated given that Claude's strength growth, while not bad, is the lowest amongst the House Leaders. Compared to its closest competitors, Wyvern Rider and Sniper, Wyvern Rider has slightly higher boosts in important areas like Strength and Speed, which both have a plus 3 boost. Although this may seem like a big difference, Wyvern Master's Strength boost is only 1 less than Rider, and the Speed boost is much less necessary in Claude, who will generally be one of your faster units in the Verdant Wind playthrough. As for Sniper, another strong Bowfair class, it only has a plus 1 boost to Strength while having slightly higher Dex at plus 5 and only a plus 3 luck to add on to those boosts. Overall, I'd have to say that Wyvern Master's base stats and boosts are the best out of all the House Leaders' first unique class, while also being comparable to some of the best advanced classes in the game. As for skills, Claude gains a pretty standard plus 3 growth modifier to bows, authority, and flying as a Wyvern Master. The bow and authority growth are both great areas to grow in for higher bow prowess levels, access to the bow combat arc of Closer, and earlier access to A-ranked battalions. The flying growth is pretty useful for his enemy phasing capabilities, as getting access to Alert Stance Plus earlier, which alongside an ability like Battalion Wrath, can make for a good enemy phase build without too much investment required.
To finish off the stats, let's talk about the growth rates. The first thing to note is that the strength growth rate at 10% is slightly higher than High Lord and Armored Lord, which are only at 5%. Other than that, it's pretty standard, with 20% increase to HP growth, 5% to speed and defense growth, and 10% to charm. These growth rates are pretty average and comparable to several of the advanced classes. The biggest weakness is probably the lack of a dexterity growth increase. This is an important stat for Claude for guaranteeing hit rates and crit rates for long-range shots and for enemy phasing. However, since Claude has the highest base dexterity growth in the game, this shouldn't be a major problem by any means. He should have plenty enough dex unless you get really unlucky, especially because of the high dex boost while in the class. Overall, the stats of Wyvern Master are solid, not particularly standing out, but definitely not hindering Claude either. The real strength of this class aren't the stats, but instead the innate advantages of being a flying class, along with the excellent set of class abilities. Reaching this class will almost certainly be a big power spike for Claude.
After the Chapter 16 mission, the Wyvern Master class automatically upgrades to the Barbarossa, which comes with a considerable amount of improvements. Unlike Armored Lord to Emperor, Claude actually does get some minor base stat improvements across the board going into Barbarossa. He gets around 1 to 2 more points in the bases, or in the case of HP, 5 points, which could definitely result in getting a point there if you didn't get many HP level ups in the handful of chapters between acquiring both of these classes. The most notable base increase is the +1 move, taking this class from a 7 move to an 8. This puts it in line with the highest move classes in the game like Falcon Knight, Paladin, and Wyvern Lord. While in Barbarossa, the already pretty good stat boosts become considerably better. His HP and strength go to a +3, regardless if he is mounted or not. His dex goes up to +5 to match snipers, and he has a +2 defense, charm, and mounted speed boost. He gets a boost in every area he wants, aside from maybe a bit of luck. And as for growth rates, the HP and strength rates increase from 20% and 10% to 30% and 15% respectively, which are welcome changes. Additionally, the speed growth goes from 5% to a more significant 10%. In terms of the House Leader class's second tier unique class, this is definitely the most statistically impactful given all the boosts and growth rate improvements are being actually used by Claude. Compared to Dimitri's Great Lord boosts, which have a weird focus on speed that you won't really need as a primarily enemy phase unit, and Edelgard's Emperor just generally lacking improvements, Claude's Barbarossa doesn't really have any notable useless stats or statistical shortcomings.
The class abilities remain the same upon upgrading to Barbarossa, which is totally fine since they couldn't get a whole lot better than they already are. Like the other house leaders, mastering Barbarossa grants access to a unique combat art that is only usable in this class. At first glance, Wind God only seems to provide +5 might and +20 hit, which are of course very useful, but it lacks any sort of special effect. However, the real special effect here is actually the range, able to hit all the way up to 5 range, and potentially even further if you take advantage of longbows or fail not. Similar to Deadeye, this allows for extremely long-range snipes, which can be even more safe due to the properties of Barbarossa. After sniping an enemy, Claude can take advantage of flying and Canto to retreat to inaccessible tiles and avoid any counterattacks. Alternatively, for dual phasing tactics, you can just use Wind God with a killer bow, which can potentially result in kills rather than just safe chip damage, and then place yourself in the middle of a group of enemies to clear them out. This is definitely the most useful of the 3 House Leader class mastery combat arts, and if this class wasn't appealing enough on its own, Wind God provides additional incentive to use it. If your Claude build is more player phase or dual phase oriented, I would definitely rush the Barbarossa mastery by equipping a knowledge gem to pick up this combat art as soon as possible. If not, there's no big rush to pick it up, but it can't hurt to have it, especially since it doesn't take up one of your combat art slots.
With all that being considered, it's pretty easy to see how strong both Wyvern Master and Barbarossa are as classes with very little to complain about. If anything, the only potential weakness, especially on enemy phasing builds, are the lack of additional bow range abilities as base class abilities. However, this is easily mitigated by the broken accessory, the Chalice of Beginnings, the Retribution Gambit, which allows counterattacking from any range, or longbows, which grant an extra tile of range. While on the subject of enemy phasing and counter range, it is important to note that bows cannot counterattack at point blank, so you also need the Chalice, Retribution, or in this case mini bows to handle attacking at melee range. Alternatively, you can also use close counter, but this will take up an ability slot. At the end of the day, the range problems are a nitpick and are relatively non-issues given all of the workarounds that you can easily plan to acquire and use on Claude if you are going to take advantage of this class. As for strengths, well, there is a lot, so I'll try to make this brief. Bowfare is a great ability, and the fact that he is a flying class with that mobility of +8 move, this makes it really fantastic. Although not mentioned in the other House Leader class overviews, Charm is a pretty decent ability, and with Claude's stellar mobility in conjunction with his last ability, Canto, Charm is simply just much easier to take advantage of. It can actually have a genuine impact on a lot of maps, especially with Leonie given her personal ability of doing an additional +2 damage next to melee units stacking with Charm, granting her essentially +10 damage in conjunction with whatever weapon fare she has. As I mentioned prior, the class is statistically in quite a strong position, with Barbarossa in particular being genuinely on par compared to master classes. This is especially notable when noticing that its growth rates are ever so slightly better than Wyvern Lord, Also arguably one of the strongest classes in the entire game and another 8-move class. Although Wyvern Lord's boosts are a bit more min-maxed, Barbarossa still gets them all in the worthwhile areas and is definitely good enough to be mixed in with the upper echelon of master classes. Additionally, the mastery is actually useful compared to many of the underwhelming or situational masteries in late game classes, and it's especially better than the previous House Leader Mastery combat arts. Lastly, although this isn't directly correlated with the class, it's important to note that the Immortal Corps is quite a strong battalion and is generally more valuable as a pickup for your playthrough compared to the other House Leader battalions. This is due to the fact that it's a flying battalion, which are generally more rare to come by, especially since stats are quite strong at 120 endurance, plus 8 might, 2 to 3 range, minus 2 magic, plus 15 avoid, plus 4 defense, and plus 4 charm, while only requiring Sea Authority to be used.
Overall, I would give Wyvern Master and Barbarossa a combined rating of 10 out of 10. This may sound high, but it can't be understated how much of a benefit these classes are for Claude. While Dimitri and Edelgard both have their unique overpowered gimmicks of Battalion Wrath Vantage and Raging Storm, Claude's unique overpowered gimmick is these classes themselves. They're the only flying Bowfarer classes in the game, which automatically gives them a really important niche of their own. Even if they would theoretically be better with a different ability like Bow Range +1 or Bow Range +2 instead of Charm, I think it would be a disservice to lower the rating of these classes based on how they would compare to a hypothetical version of themselves, while in reality they have no competition in the game. These classes have everything you could possibly want: solid stats, an excellent list of class abilities, a really strong exclusive combat art, amazing mobility, and great damage output if built correctly. And it manages to achieve all this with a class that requires zero investment whatsoever, notably zero flying investment, which can be annoying to raise, especially since Claude is a melee unit and therefore can't access Pegasus Knight. This means you can use your instruction points early in the game to invest more into bows, or into swords and Claude's budding talent and axes to certify into Mercenary and Warrior and pick up the Wrath Vantage combo for enemy phase builds. As an alternative enemy phase option, you can work on raising Flying and Authority for a dodge tank build centered around Alert Stance Plus and Battalion Wrath, as mentioned earlier. No matter how you build Claude, you will always end up a strong unit because of how powerful this class is, and for all the reasons mentioned, it just has to rank among the absolute best classes in the game.
So, if it wasn't already obvious, this class is going straight into the top of S tier. Flying classes are generally some of the strongest in the game, and the fact that this class is specifically meant for an already strong unit while having its own niche amongst the flyers makes it truly stand out as a top tier unique class. That's about all there is to say about Claude's unique Wyvern Master and Barbarossa classes. If you liked the video or have any thoughts of your own, please leave a like and make sure to comment.
I also recommend checking the description if you're not already subscribed to both of our channels. Minor announcement, starting with the next episode, we'll be alternating uploads between channels.
However, under the playlist section, you'll still have access to the full series regardless of which channel you're on, so there's that.
With the House Leader classes out of the way, stay tuned for episode 4 over on J Cross's channel, where we'll be moving on to Byleth's unique class, Enlightened One.